Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim, and we talk about horror movies on this show. And in this episode, we are looking at the new version of Pet Sematary, which of course came out just last Friday, and stars Jason Clarke and John Lithgow. And Tim, you know I love to be Lithgowed.
Wait, what? Okay.
You know it to be true. You know it to be
Yeah.
true.
He's a great actor. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, good. I'm glad we agree. Yeah, we'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers somewhere in the middle of the show, but otherwise that is what we're going to do. So, cards on the table. I don't like the original movie.
You son of a. Okay.
And you do. If I recall correctly, you do like the original movie.
I love the original. I think it's a classic. I think it still holds up. I also love the book. It's my second favorite Stephen King book of all time, right under it. I think it's really great. So yeah, big fan of those.
Okay, I've not read the book, but I was not into the movie. I was quite negative on it because I seen it twice. I seen the original movie twice. I just wasn't that into it. I didn't get the praise. I didn't get why people liked it that much. So getting out of this remake, I was kind of like, okay, it's getting oddly good buzz leading up to it.
So my excitement for this movie was like all over the place because originally I was like, yeah, what's the point of this? Because the original, it still holds up pretty well, and it was, screenplay was written by Stephen King. It was pretty faithful to the book, so it's not like there's any, real reason you need to change it, like anything they missed that you'd want to, have a more faithful adaptation of or anything. But then once I started to hear the people that were involved, I got a little more excited. I was like, all right, these seem pretty good. This could actually be a pretty cool movie. Then I saw the first trailer, and I thought it just looked like, stupid, generic, big budget Hollywood horror movie where, stuff is just creepy for no reason. And so then I got a lot less excited. Then they had the infamous second trailer that reveals a big spoiler moment, which got me a little more interested. But then also I started hearing all the positive buzz coming out of South by Southwest, and then I got really, really interested, and that's where I was going into the movie.
Roller coaster of emotions, Timmy.
Yeah.
Roller coaster ride of emotions. Obviously, I didn't like the first movie, so I didn't like the trailer either. I thought the trailer looked very generic, like you said. And then the positive buzz started coming out, and I was like, okay. I mean, I'm going to see it anyway for the show, but I'll give it a chance. We'll see how it goes, and we'll see if it swings me, if it wins me over. So I think you've got the more interesting answer just because you liked the original movie and because you have been on this roller coaster ride. So I'll ask the question. I should explain the premise, I suppose, shouldn't I? Family moves to a new house that is out in the middle of nowhere in Maine. In fact,
Ludlow, Maine.
At one point, the wife in this movie actually wears a T-shirt that just says Maine on it, which I thought was a bit on the nose, quite frankly, for Stephen King material. But basically, there's this mysterious pet cemetery near their house where if you bury something, it will come back, and it happens with the cat early on, and then of course eventually something tragic happens, and the father is tempted to use it for something a bit greater and bigger. So that is the general premise of the film. We'll get into spoilers later. But Tim, did you enjoy this remake of Pet Sematary?
All right, so one thing I have to talk about first before I answer it, which you might have seen me complaining online, but it is going to paint my review a little bit because the audience at my showing was goddamn awful. They were like one of the worst crowds I've been in like in a long time. Like and of course the most annoying person was right next to me, but like throughout the entire movie, just like nonstop obnoxious laughter. Like I'm assuming they're probably high or something, because it's just, one of those things where, anytime like they would just show like a shot of a cat or something, and like the guy next to me would be going like, like, and then like
There's a pussycat. There's a pussycat.
Yeah. No, like literally, like going like, oh, or like, oh shit, like, oh damn, and then like, the person, and literally like people taking out cell phones, talking to each other, not like, slight whispering, like, hey, but like going like, oh man, I can't believe they did that. And then like it's not just there was just the person next to me. It was also the people in front of us and someone in the back, like middle of the theater. And it's a pretty small theater, so even if you have like a couple of pockets of like 4 or 5 like annoying disruptive people, it's kind of like feels like that is the whole audience, and it really really put a very sour note. I was really livid, and of course I didn't say anything because I'm a coward. But
Oh, tell me, you're not a coward. You're.
I did shush someone at a movie once, and like I immediately felt bad about it. And then also one time in college, I was at a movie where someone was talking and being obnoxious, and then someone else said like, "Hey, quiet down," and the other person was like, immediately started yelling at them and be like, "Oh, like you messed up. Like I'm gonna meet you in the parking lot. Like you're dead. I'm gonna beat the shit out of you." So that always kind of stuck with me too. You never know. Like,
Yeah, you don't know how crazy the other person is. There's always a risk they're a complete nut job.
yeah, yeah, like there a couple of years ago, there was a guy that got shot in a movie theater in Florida, I believe.
Of course,
for
it was
telling
Florida.
someone to be quiet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I always have, but then the problem is though, it's like I don't say anything, but I'm like, I'm having these like fantasies in my head of like, oh, how good would it be just to tell this person to shut up or like punch him in the face, and then but then also it's like, well, if the whole theater is like this, then I can't say tell the whole theater to shut up. And but then at the same time though, I feel like I'm kind of missing like little parts of the movie because I'm like stuck in my head thinking about how awful this audience is. So just take that with a grain of salt. That aside though, I didn't really like the movie. It's so I do definitely want to see it.
Feed me with your hate. Feed me.
Now, like I do definitely want to see it again with either a better crowd or watch it at home where I don't have those disturbances. But even that stuff aside, I don't think it would change my opinion that much. Maybe I like it a little better, but like it's just at best maybe it was like okay. Like I think the best part about this is the cast. I think everyone does like a really good job. I especially like the woman that played Rachel, and I like that her character got a little more to do than the original. But yeah, I mean everything just kind of fell off. There was a lot of like just kind of generic Hollywood, the kind of stuff you get in these big budget movies where it's just like, all right, creepy kids in masks for no reason, just typical jump scares, some bad CGI. Some of the sets looked kind of bad. Like, do you think some of like the outdoor nighttime shots looked they're filming on like a crappy studio or something?
I agree. The entire journey with John Lithgow and Jason Clarke to the real Pet Sematary, that entire journey I thought looked terrible. I thought it just looked bad. In case anyone's surprised or not got it yet, no, I did not like this movie. I was bored to tears, basically from start to finish. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like even John Lithgow couldn't save this for me.
He's felt kind of wasted. Like when they announced him as Judd, I was like, perfect casting. Like Fred Gwynn, like he owns that character in the original movie. But if there was anyone else that was gonna do it, like John Lithgow, it's like yes, like all right, and it's just. Yeah, he doesn't really do it, and then like they kind of they do like some like kind of weird stuff that just doesn't play in this day and age. Like with him and the daughter, it's kind of like, if this is like a modern take, can we not have like this like young girl just going over this like old guy's house who has like a gun out in the middle of nowhere and like and just have him like saying this kind of like weird stuff that's like you gotta know that doesn't play in this day and age, but. Yeah, disappointing.
Yeah, I wasn't into it, and I think I've come to accept that I just don't like this story that much. And maybe the book's great. Maybe I would like the book if I actually read the book. But between,
I mean, if you don't love the premise, maybe not. But I mean, I think I think I really like the premise as like a horror story. I think it works, really well for that.
Like there's so many elements in this. Again, maybe they work better in the book. Where I'm just going, this just feels like a random tacked on thing. Like for me, there's like no real reason in this movie why there should be like visions of dead people before anything actually happens with the cemetery. But no, of course there's like weird visions and people talking to people and all sorts of crazy spooky Hollywood horror movie shit happening.
Yeah.
And all of it I just thought was uninteresting. I didn't think it looked like an interesting movie. It wasn't visually interesting. Like you said, some of the outdoors nighttime scenes just look like a bad set, like a bad sound stage, with really bad sort of backdrops. Like, so this just feels like a green screen, or it feels like
Yeah.
whatever, So like I just wasn't into it that much, and by the time I got like a part way through, I was just kind of waiting for that because I'd seen the original, I knew what the beats of the movie were going to be, and sure,
Yeah.
they switched up a couple of things to make it surprising, I guess, but
But it feels like, what's the point of that other than, like, it feels like the only reason they switched stuff up was so it would be different. Because again, the original is so faithful to the book. It's like, I don't know. I just got the feeling that they were probably like, well, can't really just do the same thing, so let's just change this and this. But the changes don't really make it better. Like, they
no,
just make it different.
yeah, they're just there for change's sake, and then. Like, I don't know, like, without talking about it, because obviously we're not in spoilers yet, but is the ending of this more closer to the book, or was that this?
Oh no, not at all.
Okay, so
Not
that was
at all.
completely a
Yeah.
new thing, right? Okay,
Yeah.
all right, just curious.
Yeah.
Curious.
Like, there were a few things that I like. Like, it won't be like completely negative. Like, I do like that. I feel like we got more of Church than in the original, and yeah, I did like seeing that crazy cat. Um, so there was like a few things like that, and then there was like some okay gore and violence, which I liked. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a couple of okay things here and there, but otherwise, so yeah, there really wasn't
I
much.
think the problem with the violence stuff, though, is that, like, I agree there's a couple of fun moments of violence towards the end, but it just made me wish the whole movie was that. Like, it made me wish that the whole
Right?
movie was more
Yeah.
schlocky and just more about this stuff happening more
Yeah.
over, throughout the film rather than being relegated to the last 15 minutes.
Oh,
Uh,
totally. Yeah.
I don't know. It's nothing about it was that interesting to me, and especially since, like, you know where it's going, you know eventually it's going to make this point. It's got a weird structure because of what the plot is, because it's like
Mhm.
we can't get to the real meat of it until like halfway through the movie, because we have to
Mhm.
set up a lot of things, then we have to have the big thing happen in the middle to actually set the main plot
Yeah.
going, kind of thing.
And I kind of feel like maybe there's some stuff that they like we're trying to maybe like take for granted that, oh, since people know the original or whatever, we don't really have to explain this. But it just felt like stuff didn't maybe matter as much, or like wasn't as important. Like, I feel like they never mentioned the trucks going by. Like, they show a couple of shots of them and stuff, but like, no one ever has like a line like in the original or whatever where they're like, oh yeah, this is like a truck route, and like, oh yeah, people never pay attention to speed limits here, so be careful and stuff. And I feel like they just kind of skip over all that, which is, but I feel like that's like, it works well for the story though, because it's such a big thing that it's like, I don't know, when they show like all these shots of like trucks like zooming by, it's like no one's gonna mention anything about that. They're not gonna, I don't know, think that's important.
Yeah, I also felt kind of like, obviously movies have a lot of leeway with how they portray sound, right? They decide to make things quieter or louder depending on the thing, depending on the moment,
Yeah.
the context. The idea that if someone's focused on something, they might make like tapping on a desk really loud, like like thunderous or something like that, right? But something about the trucks going by in this like felt really disingenuous. I'm like, yeah, trucks going by are pretty loud. Don't get me wrong, but the way they all like turn around and jump like they've had a heart attack when it goes by
Yeah.
like 20 feet away felt a little like, wait, how loud was that truck? I don't really buy
Yeah.
that it was that scary when you're this far away from the road.
Yeah. No, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a hard one to like critique for me beyond kind of, because to me it has a lot of the tropes that I don't like about a lot of supernatural horror movies from Hollywood. It feels very kind of
Yeah.
going through the motions of.
Mm.
I think that's my big problem, is that almost every time anything supernatural is happening, I've had this feeling of we're just going through the motions of what this scene's supposed to be, and I don't really feel any like creativity behind it.
Yeah.
And that was a big problem. I remember like one of the vaguely interesting things in the original movie was the wife had this sister, Zelda,
Right.
and again we won't get into it too much until spoilers, but in the remake I feel like they showed more of that, but somehow I feel like I actually got less of what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, like there was like a few like interesting things I thought that they did with that, but yeah, they still didn't really seem like they nailed it. Uh and yeah, like I think maybe one of the things I liked the most was probably Rachel's character and the stuff with her sister and
Rachel.
and like it feels like they were trying to go like they were setting up some interesting themes like about how she has this kind of weird association with death and how it kind of comes back to her like later on in the movie, and they kind of set this thing up with her husband, how he's such like a staunch atheist that he doesn't believe in supernatural and stuff, and it feels like they were setting up interesting things that just doesn't really feel paid off.
Yeah,
Like
they don't do anything with it. Like I actually like one of the things that I thought I was going to appreciate early on in the film is that it felt like it was giving Rachel more time than the original. It felt
right,
like
yeah,
it felt
me
like
too.
it was focusing on how she views, because ultimately Pet Sematary is a movie about not accepting death, right? That is what
Right.
the story's about. And I thought what they were doing in this film in the first half, even though I wasn't in love with it, I thought at least it made sense that they were setting up, okay, how Lewis, how Rachel feel about death, how the kids feel about death, and we're going to pay off like not being able to accept death in different ways. And the weird thing is though is that she still like leaves the movie for a while in the second half, and it felt like it like from that point on it was just so imbalanced again, where it's all about the dad, it's all about Lewis, it's all about Jason Clarke's character.
Yeah, and I feel like we didn't really get much of him that much in the beginning, so I was the same way. I thought like, oh, okay, this might be an interesting take to more focus on these characters that didn't get as much time in the original, but then yeah, it kind of feels like all of a sudden it's his show, and it's like, oh, or, yeah, it feels weird.
In fact, at one point I thought they were going to go a different path with him as well, where I felt like they were even setting up that he was going kind of crazy, like maybe he.
Yeah, which that might have made sense, especially
Yeah.
with all the stuff going on, and again, kind of setting up early on that he is very rigid with his views about all this kind of weird stuff going on. So yeah, it would have been a more interesting take to see him freak out more. But he seems very like he shrugs stuff off like so completely, even though all this weird stuff is going on around him. It's I don't know, it's kind of strange. It just feels like a wasted opportunity, really.
Yeah, and you can even play with the idea that he's not willing to accept death because he's a doctor. He doesn't want people to die on his
Right? Yeah.
table. He's like, that's determined. I mean, we literally get a scene early on where he's like trying to save someone and it doesn't work.
Mhm.
Like, and that's he can't accept death because he takes this pride in it and whatever. But I don't know. Like, I feel like the movie wants to be about something. It wants to be about the fear of death or not being able to accept death.
Mhm.
And but I don't think it actually says anything about it. In the second half, I don't think it actually makes any point because
No, not at all.
the ending feels more like shock value just for the sake of here's our wacky
Yeah.
ending. Here, have it. I
Yeah.
guess you could say that if you don't accept death, then you'll be consumed by death. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
It's a bit
Mhm.
broad, but
Which
that's fine.
yeah, but I think it's more I think that works better in the original movie than it did in this one here, which yeah, we'll get into more in spoilers, but uh yeah, I was kind of like with the ending of this one, I was just very much like, oh, okay, like it really had like very little effect on me.
Yeah. Just to talk about some technical stuff, I thought the way it looked, we mentioned the nighttime scenes, but I thought in general it didn't look that great, and I also thought that
Yeah.
the direction was pretty lacking. Like, do you know what's really bugging me in some movies recently is this thing where it's like, oh, it's supposed to be a little bit darker right now. We'll just have the camera be underexposed, and it's just annoying to look at. Like,
Yeah.
instead of lighting it in a way that's like atmospheric at night, all the shots of them in the forest, or even at the start, the opening shot's this big, like it's like a bird's eye shot going down the road, but it's just
Yeah.
it's this underexposed, so you're kind of like it feels like you're having to like focus really hard to actually make out the trees and stuff, and it's just uncomfortable to look at. And I'm like,
Mhm.
go and look at say something like Predator, right? Look at how all that
Mhm.
nighttime stuff is shot in the end of Predator, and then look at the scene in this when they're like walking through the forest to the pet cemetery, and it just looks like this blue tinted like set.
Yeah.
It's just unappealing to look at. It's kind of horrible.
Like, are we lose like the people that are making movies? Like, are we losing these like skills that like people have to properly light stuff and everything to just like just go an easier route with people like just fix it and with the digital stuff after the movie or
I don't know,
because
maybe.
like movies looked really good at a time and I don't know they don't always look so good now.
Yeah, I feel like even low budget movies from the 80s look better than what some movies do
Yeah.
now. Not all movies.
Yeah.
Like, I think you still have your champions. I still think like Christopher Nolan movies you can kind of go to and expect a visual
Sure.
feast
Yeah.
because he really cares about the art of filmmaking. Tarantino, you can go and get a lot of good cinematography. Like,
Well, I mean, the last movie we saw in theaters, Us, I thought looked really great. Like,
oh
that
sure, yeah,
was,
all good. So it's not
but
dead. There's people still making good looking movies,
yeah,
but and of course, I mean, we're talking about directors here because we associate the directors beforehand, but obviously, director of photography is what's really important here.
yeah.
And yeah, I feel like there's been a because the other one that bugged me recently, even though I liked the movie overall, was Captain Marvel. That movie
Mhm.
was like just underexposed a lot, and it was really annoying. Like
Yeah.
it was kind of an ugly movie.
I Yeah, I mean, I think it's just in general, especially a big problem with the Marvel movies. Which, don't get me wrong, I love them. I'll go see everyone on opening day. I get very excited for them, but I do think visually speaking, aside from a few here and there, they're kind of very like kind of generic and seem to all just kind of fall in a line. Like there isn't really much that makes them stand out.
Big budget TV. That's what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is funny because I feel like some TVs actually getting to the point where that's where all the style is now.
Sure. Yeah.
You watch like Westworld or you watch Godless, which was on Netflix last year. It's just this western. It's it was like the full wide screen and it's like all these big panoramic shots and I'm like, man, this is a movie. Damn it! You can call it a miniseries, but damn, it's a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, the movie's just kind of ugly. I wasn't into the visuals of it.
Yeah, there's really nothing like visually that interesting, and I didn't see the other movies these directors made because I think they did like Starry Eyes or something like that that people seem to like because when this is coming out, it seemed like a lot of people are like, oh, like the Starry Eyed guys are doing this movie. People seem to be excited about that, but I don't know, I'm curious if that has a more visual flair or what it is that's good about that.
Did the Valentine's segment of Holidays, which we did watch on the show.
Oh, what do I even remember that segment? I don't think I remember which one that was.
It's been 3 years, Tim. I think it's okay.
Wait, was that the one where is it like the girl has a crush on her teacher? Or is that a whole movie?
I feel like someone had a heart in the forest. I think it ended in a forest with like an actual heart.
Like she cut out someone's heart or something. I
feel like I recall that. Yeah. I think we'll give a spoiler warning though, so we can talk about the plot and the changes and everything else. So full spoilers now for Pet Sematary 2019. So yeah, they changed the kid. The kid that gets hit by the truck is not the son anymore. It's the daughter.
Yeah.
Which was really, which by the way, it was really obvious. There was a point about half an hour into this where we spent so much time with the daughter's relationship with her dad that I was like, if it's the son that gets hit, then this is like, what's the point of all this setup of her having all this time?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you saw like the last trailer they did, but they totally gave it away in the trailer.
I did not.
It was like, it was so freaking annoying. Like as I was watching this movie, I was like, oh well, I mean, would have been nice to not know this going in, like.
Even the poster I'm looking at on the IMDb now has her kind of in the middle looking kind of scary. So I mean, it's kind of obvious actually.
So they still have the nerve to act like a fake out, like and have Gage, like running towards it too. Like, come on.
So here's kind of to go to my cynicism about Hollywood and remakes and how just the difference in like mentalities. Now I don't like the original film, right? But I think that still shows something to me. Is that all on the fact that it's a different kid, right? Forgetting that for a second, the big difference between the truck hitting scene, right, is now it's been a while since I've seen the original. It wasn't since like 2015 whenever we watched it. Is I just remember like you hear the truck coming, and it's like a quick like gut punch of like, oh, the kid's been hit. It's really dark and everyone starts running. This movie, right? So he runs up, he grabs Gage, and then the truck's going towards the girl. And we get this slow motion sequence of like the truck driver like turns because he sees her, and the tanker comes off the truck, and in slow motion we see it rolling towards her, and it's like I mean it's not that long really in time, but it's like so over the top and like ridiculous, compared to like the original, compared to just how you would have tackled this a long time ago. It was like,
yeah, and like even the like in the original, like I don't know if you remember, but it's like, the dad's running out, and then you see the truck, you see the kid, you don't actually see him hit him. I think maybe you might see like a shoe fly in the air or something like that, but then like you kind of get the scene where like the father like falls to his knees and he screams no, and then you kind of see like they do this thing where they show like photographs of him with the kid, and you kind of hear that it's like photo sound showing these past memories as like the dad screaming, which even if you don't like that, that's still a lot more interesting than being like oh it's 2019, we can really do this up, like let's show the carnage of this like truck stopping and the tanker flying off, which I mean, thank God that didn't explode, because it looked like they were. I'm assuming they were carrying like some type of gas or something. Like it looks like one of those kind of things.
yeah, it does. This is an oil tanker. Yeah.
Yeah, you think if it like flies off the truck and like hits the road, it probably would explode. But
actually, other things. So I feel like this is action movies have trained you to expect explosions on impact.
Fair. That's
I feel
very
like
fair.
there's still meant to be a spark at least. I think to ignite ignite the fluid
True.
or whatever's in there.
Yeah. But then again, like, this thing, like, it just nails the girl head on, and yet she somehow is still pretty intact. Like, you think she should just be like a pink mist at that point, but
it should be a splat. It should be like a thin, just like membrane of blood and mucus.
Yeah. I remember this stuck out to me as a kid. I remember one time my mom was talking about how she was driving home from work, and there was like a big dog in the middle of the road, like I don't know, maybe like German Shepherd or Saint Bernard or something, and a truck hit it, and the way she described it, she just said like it just exploded. Like there was nothing left of it. It was just like a red cloud, and it's like that's what would be happening to these children. Like there wouldn't be enough to bring them back to the pet cemetery.
don't poke holes in their logic, Timmy. To be fair, that's a problem in the original as well. Then, to be fair,
sure, yeah.
That's not unique to this one, but
that's fair.
So of course we have to go through him like mourning over it and like being like, oh, I've got a plan, and he drugs Judd. Which, by the way, I remember talking about this in the original. Is that everything's actually Judd's fault. Judd showed him the cemetery, brought the cat back, even though he knew he'd come back wrong. He tried to justify it and say, oh, I thought it'd be nice because that cat was sweet, whereas my dog was already a dickhead.
Well, and there was like one or two lines where he kind of, because that is like a big problem. I will give you that. But there was one or two lines where he's kind of talking about like, oh, there's something about that place. It has a pool on you. It makes you want to go there. But it's like, explore that more, because without having some type of reason like that, it is kind of like, this guy's a dickhead. Why did he show him this?
Yeah.
But I mean, we didn't even go into the church stuff, which again, it does seem kind of weird. Not just Judd being like making such a big deal about it, like we'll do it tonight, we'll take care of it, and then going up to it seems like he has reservations at first, and then he's finally like, yeah, let's go up to the pet cemetery. But then it's also just weird at the same time where like Lewis like doesn't even question it. He's just kind of like, hey, where are we going? And he's like, just follow me. And he's like, okay. like like you think they would have some type of conversation where it'd be like, like, oh, like, would you do anything to spare your child the grief of death? Like, would this be like, just have some type of conversation to give him a reason, instead of just being like,
well, part of
all right.
Part of the problem in this one is that they did this thing where there's like the regular pet cemetery that's fine, it's just a normal pet cemetery, and there's like this landfill, this wall that was built eons ago, and like Judd makes him climb over it. We have Judd and him climbing over this wall. And then they have to walk a great distance in the forest before they get to the real, like, the mystical spot, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with making that a thing in the movie, but the problem is that makes it, at least in the original, it was like, it was just this, okay, here's the short walk to this thing, this is the place where you bury your pet. So there was no reason for the dad to argue with it too much. Whereas in this, it's like, follow me up this wall, and then this walk, this extra, like, mile, I'm not going to tell you why.
Yeah, well, in the original, they still had like the the resurrection spot was still different than the actual Pet Cemetery, but I don't think it was as pronounced as it was in this movie, where it's like, again, oh, it's 2019, we got to do things bigger and better, and we got to have this giant wall of like sticks and bones and stuff that like people can't climb over and everything. Like, yeah, it's just a little overdone. And then we didn't even mention it, but just one thing I thought was so stupid, like the very beginning of the movie where they're just going in the backyard and they just see a procession of children in masks beating a drum for no reason. Like they never mention at any point throughout the movie like all right, yeah, why are the kids doing this? Like,
Well, at the
you know,
end, at the end, Ellie puts on a mask like that, which I think to me implied that all those kids were all back from the dead.
you think?
I mean, given that she put that mask on, I think that was the implication.
uh, I don't know. That seems kind of weird. So like
Well,
this town is just full of like this many dead people.
I think, yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the movie, the whole family's dead. Like,
Well, yeah.
they're like a happy dead family together.
Mm, I don't know. I mean, if that's what they're going for, I think that's pretty stupid. But
I'm not disagreeing with that, Timmy. Like, because there's a whole like chase. Once Ellie comes back and she's acting kind of wrong at first, and she seems a bit of a temper. She's hitting things. And then of course she kills Judd, and it's this scene where she like stabs him violently. She cuts him in the back of the ankle, or stabs him in the back of the ankle, and it's really brutal. And I'm like, oh, here's some gore. And like,
yeah,
I could take a movie with like this like 8-year-old like being a killer and like sneaking up on people and stabbing them. Like, I would actually be kind of into that. Although I did question how at no point in this like final like 15 minutes, when, because the mum's back with the son and she's like it becomes like a slasher movie where like the girl's chasing them through the house, and eventually they've barricaded themselves in a room, and Ellie finally is getting in. So the mother's like lowering Gage out the window to Jason Clarke and dropping him, and she gets stabbed from behind. And I couldn't help but feel like at no point does like the mother try to like maybe use the fact that she's bigger and stronger to like defend herself. It feels like
yeah.
it's just taken for granted that, oh no, I can't fight back. Ellie's like Jason Voorhees now. I have to just be scared and run.
Yeah, I mean, like sometimes it seemed like she was just a normal girl who is kind of a little creepier now. But then there's also times where it seems like they're trying to make her a monster. Like there's one time where she's kind of like walking on all fours and hissing and like jumping around. And then like, yeah, one time when yeah, I think when Jason Clarke's like holding her down and she's kind of like, like pounding her fists against him and like, beating him really fast. And I wasn't sure. It's like, oh, like, yeah, it seems like, I don't know, she had maybe slightly better strength and speed and stuff. It's kind of,
Yeah,
not sure exactly what they're going for.
either she's stronger and faster, or you make it more interesting in the sense that she has to kind of lure people in because she isn't strong. Yeah. Just because she has to like put up with the fact that she's a small girl and she has to like kill adults. Like that could be interesting if they play with that. But there was no like sneaking up really. Like it was really just like she comes up behind her mom and stabs her, and then stabs her repeatedly, and I'm like, fight back. Like I know she's your kid technically, but like smack her in the face.
Yeah, and also at this point she has shown that like she is having problems with her and she thinks this is wrong. So it's not like she's like under the thrall of like, but it's my daughter. It's like, no, like she was very like vocally like, this is wrong, like this is messed up, so it didn't seem like it'd have to be that big of a decision.
Yeah, and maybe this will be a controversial statement, but I think if your child's coming at you with a knife trying to stab you, I think you're justified to, give them a whack.
Yeah.
I'm not for violence. I'm not like someone who promotes like violence against children and like beating them for misbehaving. But I'm saying if they're actually coming at you with a knife, that is the time where give them a smack.
Yeah, and I feel like this is when more interesting stuff should have happened, but the ending feels so rushed. It seems like there's no time to let the interesting stuff breathe because, yeah, like, when Rachel starts freaking out and is running and hiding, that's interesting. And then like, the dad being like, oh, but this is your daughter, like, and like, that's kind of interesting. But it seems like he flip-flops like so fast. Like he's like, no, like we needed more time with her. Like, she's your daughter. But it seems like pretty quickly he's like, oh no, this is wrong. I have to strangle her to death. Like, You know what I mean? It feels like there's no room to breathe and explore these ideas of what each parent's going through.
Yeah, it feels like it somehow ignores all the interesting elements that could be,
Yeah.
explored in the
No,
story.
no, this is probably just like a personal thing, but I don't like this take as much. I like more like with the original movie, Gage comes back and they even have like a brief flashback where they're talking about some other person that once tried to bring their kid back, where it seems like the people that come back, they're a little more like animalistic, like they're not as kind of like thinky and stuff, which I guess obviously you get with the original with Gage because he's so young, but like I don't really like that they basically just turned the daughter into like kind of the cliche Hollywood creepy kid. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like there's so much stuff where she's just like, especially towards the end when the dad's trying to kill her, and she kind of just snaps back into being normal, like, but daddy, I love you. And then it's like, it's like such like a cliche, like, okay, I've seen this before.
And not to mention, like, after she kills the mom, she drags the mother's body by herself out to the cemetery.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess, like, okay, maybe that does tell us she has, like, increased strength, right? Because she really shouldn't be able to do that. Because I mean, keep in mind, she has to go over this wall to get there. It's not like she's just dragging her on the floor. And the big sort of twisty moment at the end is that, like, the dad's, like, almost won. He's almost killed her, and then he gets stabbed. And it's actually because the mother's now came back from the cemetery. And then he comes back, and the movie ends with the three of them coming towards the car where they hit Gage before, and it's like it ends with them coming towards the car to open the door. So the implication being that they're going to kill Gage and bring him back as well. So they're one dead family. And I guess if you're going with the idea that like they couldn't accept death and now it's going to consume all of them and now they're just going to all be dead together, like okay, I kind of get the metaphor you're going for there. Like I can kind of appreciate that. But this ending is so rushed. Like, I actually remember I checked the time because I mean I was really bored. Can I just point out? I checked the time and I was like, wait a minute, this movie's because I was seeing Shazam right after, so I sort of timed it so that I was leaving one theater and just going straight into the next one. And I checked the time, thinking, wait, I have to be like done with this in like 10 minutes, and I was like, it feels like there's tons left. But sure enough, credits were rolling like 10 minutes later, like. Which by the way, they had a cover of the song, the Ramones song from the original at the end, which I forgot existed until I got to the chorus when I was walking out. I was like, I don't want to be in a pet cemetery. And I was like, oh man, I forgot they did this song.
Which I really like the Ramones version. This just kind of felt like a, I don't know, it felt kind of like a lifeless cover. I'm not really familiar with the band. Like it doesn't sound like a bad band or anything, but it just, it didn't really feel like there's much point to it. Again, kind of like with the whole movie.
Honestly, I think the Ramones song is the best thing about either of these films. I think it's the best thing that Pet Sematary has ever given us is that Ramones song.
Well, I mean, I disagree with you on that, but I mean, it is definitely a banger. I do think it's funny that this and Shazam came out like the same day. One's about a kid that becomes a superhero, the other's about a kid that becomes an undead ghoul. But I don't know. It's just like again, like I don't know, some stuff in my head I kind of feel like, okay, this is like an interesting choice. I guess we're gonna remake something. At least they're trying to do something different with it, but it's just none of it actually ends up being that good or feel like it's worthy of justifying why this movie exists. It's a real shame. And I guess and like the other big thing that we didn't really talk about was we'll kind of mention it briefly, but like I feel like they did a little more with Rachel and like her flashbacks with her sister Zelda, and I think some of the stuff they were doing here was kind of like cool and interesting, but again, like didn't really look that good. It feels like there was some bad like CGI stuff, like when Zelda dies and the dumbwaiter just felt like it didn't look good.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I appreciate they tried to give this more time because I think they realized this was like a very memorable moment for a lot of people in the original, was that flashback of like going towards the bed.
I think I mean one of the reasons why I probably like the movie more than you is because like I saw it as a kid and like I saw it like real young and it scared me, and especially the Zelda thing was like the big thing that really freaked me out when as a kid.
But I felt like here Zelda just didn't look that good. It felt again very kind of over the top Hollywood. She's her body's like contorting and she's when she's in the dumbwaiter, it's this like she's like all folded up like a Final Destination victim.
Yeah.
It felt over the top, and I wasn't really getting any atmosphere out of it. I felt very like cynical throughout this, and well, I always complain that people don't give horror a chance, and like you have to actually give yourself to it. And I was willing, I was trying. I really was. I was trying to get in the spirit of the movie, but ultimately it just kept being generic. And it's the hardest thing to get over in the world is just how generic something is if it is.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And again, I know you don't like the original, but I think at least that one is like a little more unique. I think there's stuff about it that doesn't really, I can't really compare it to like other stuff around the time. But yeah, it just feels like what's the point of this other than oh, King's really popular again. Let's, just shit out a movie and people will go see it. Which, the thing that boggles my mind is, I love Stephen King, and I'm glad that we're, like ushering a new age of King Renaissance. But that people keep talking about, oh, we should remake this movie or adapt this book again or whatever. But it's like he has so many stuff that hasn't been adapted yet. Why don't we focus on those instead of just being like, oh yeah, I want to see The Shining again, or let's do The Stand again. It's like, no, like there's a lot of other really good stuff we can still do.
How about a third go at Carrie?
Well, that's what kind of worried me about this movie is like, I was like, well, if they didn't nail it, are we gonna have to watch another one in like 5 or 10 years? Like, are people gonna go like, oh no, I got the take on it this time? Which I think I did see something from the directors or something saying that that they left it open for sequel potential, which like I don't want to see a sitcom about this undead family like living out their lives and stuff.
Not by these directors, maybe by like get Taika Waititi in here to do like a sitcom about the dead
That would
family.
be interesting. Yeah,
I'll watch
fun.
that. That could be a thing. Yeah.
Or you know what actually would be really good? I feel like Sam Raimi could have a good go at this. It feels like it would be up his alley. If he tries to make it a little schlockier, more fun.
Yeah, okay.
More like zombie killing.
I can see
Just
it.
throw Ash in there. Why not?
Oh, instead of Judd, it's just Ash who lives across the street.
Yeah. See, that would make more sense because Ash always messes stuff up. He's always like responsible for this crap.
It's like, do I see something cool? Let's bury the cat in the Pet Sematary. Trust me, this will be a hoot.
It's like, I guess, and you just see like all when they're going up there, it's just like all these graves that say Linda on them. So I gotta stop burying my Lindas here.
Notice how we're tangenting into more interesting things because the movie's not that interesting.
There's not that much to say about it. I can't really think of much more. And there's other stuff that again just feel rushed. Like we even mentioned like all the Pascal stuff. The young student that dies, and then Lewis gets visions of him. But again, it just feels like in this movie, it's kind of like they're just hitting the beats because that's what happens.
Yeah, why does this happen? Like I don't get why we have this weird subplot of him seeing a dead person.
Well, I think that I think this is just something that you're not gonna like, but like it does feel like it falls in line with King a lot. He has like a lot of stuff like this that is kind of unexplained, but where you just kind of go with like things that sometimes people have visions or powers or whatever. And I don't know. I think in the book it is more of a I think you're supposed to kind of feel this like a little bit of like mysticism kind of around the Pet Sematary,
it struck me as so tacked on. It just felt like a tacked on element to me.
In this movie, yeah, it does. Yeah. Like it feels like it has a bit more purpose in the original, and I think in the book, it is like kind of a hard thing. I think some people, dislike it a little more than me. But I mean, I'm totally okay with the character. But in this, it just didn't really feel like it had much purpose to it.
Yeah, I just didn't feel like it added anything. Yeah, I feel like you could take it out and the plot would play out the exact same way.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
Without any changes. Yeah, it's I hate to come in here and be like, oh, it was another dull Hollywood horror movie, but it was. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah. No, totally. And again, it was like just kind of, it was so strange, like just going through the like uh hearing about it and all the stuff beforehand is being like, oh, is it gonna be good? Maybe it'll be bad. Oh, actually, it sounds really good. Oh no, that looks kind of stupid. And then just being utterly, disappointed in it.
Because I get what it's kind of trying to do. You've got the atheist
Yeah,
character who doesn't believe in the afterlife. You've got the wife who hopes there's an afterlife because she's scared of death. You've got Judd, who's someone who's already lost his wife years ago, so he's kind of past death itself and
yeah,
has some experience. You've got all these different. You've got a kid who's just learning about it for the first time. You've got all these different elements. I see what you're trying to do with it, but I just think the actual core plot is not that great of a structure. It probably works much better in a book, but as a movie, the structure is
sure.
really weird. And in particular case of this movie, so many of the extra elements feel tacked on. They feel underdeveloped. It feels like it it wants to focus on everyone equally, but then changes its mind halfway through and just makes it about the
Yeah.
dad. And then on top of that, I think it's an uninteresting looking movie. It's a dull looking movie, with kind of just mediocre direction. If I was going to describe this in a nutshell, it is mediocre minus a little bit more. Like it's
Yeah.
like if it was just mediocre, it'd be like a 5. But if we're getting to ratings, I'm probably going with something more like a 4, maybe a 3.5.
Yeah, I think well, I mean, a couple of things. Uh, yeah, like I feel like there's maybe more stuff I could have been forgiving of, like, if there was other elements that work. Like, yes, if it was visually interesting or looked really good, like, yeah, maybe I can like go with something like, the plot stuff or whatever. But when it's kind of, it just feels like everything is kind of missing. The really
Especially
the only
in a horror movie, especially, I think good direction and visuals can like save the whole thing. I think you can have a really mediocre plot in a horror movie, but the actual direction and the suspense and the style of which it's told is actually enough to elevate it to great.
Yeah, I feel like uh, kind of the problem we're getting, and similar to a problem that I had with the It movie, which I definitely like the It movie a lot more, but like, I feel like maybe they're focusing on characters a bit more in these, remakes, but they're not really doing a good job of getting the horror down, because like the horror part of it was like the worst part.
It was, yeah.
Like the movie was elevated because the characters were so well done and the interactions with the kids were really great. And I feel like it's kind of similar in a way to this, where I feel like the best part about this movie would be the performances. Like, I thought everyone did a really good job. They just unfortunately didn't really have much
Yeah.
to work with.
Unfortunately, yeah, there's not as much to do as the kids in it. That like it's not as
Yeah,
endearing. You're not as like excited about them as much. That's why I think it's worrying that It 2 is going to be mainly the adults. Like,
yeah. And of course, the first volume, they had a lot to work with the script from the True Detective person, where chapter 2 of it is solely written by I think it's Doberman, the guy that wrote The Nun, one of your favorites from last year. So
by the way,
yeah.
Timmy, I got a trailer for Annabelle Comes Home, which
Oh, me too.
is notable because I hadn't seen it yet. That really happens to me now, where I don't see a trailer before it's like pops up in the theater. But
Yeah.
I got the trailer for the Annabelle Comes Home, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I like the kid. The kid who's in it was one of the girls in Haunting a Hill House,
Oh,
and
right, right, right.
was also in I, Tonya. Was also in.
Oh.
She's been like the flashback kid for like like the main character who's older now, like in like a
Yeah.
lot of movies recently. She was in like an episode of Sabrina as well. So
Okay.
hopefully it's good. It's definitely the most interesting plot of an Annabelle movie so far, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, well, I liked Annabelle 2 a lot more than you, so
It was better than the
I'm
first one, but I just didn't think it was good either.
definitely,
Yeah.
yeah, I liked it, so I'm cautiously optimistic about it. But I don't know, we'll see. Um, I forget if that comes out in June or July, but it's actually an interesting month. A lot of stuff is coming out around then.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I am sick of seeing the Curse of La Llorona trailer. Like I am, like I'm sick of that trailer. I've had it like every single time I've went to the theater in the last like 3 months.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
there you
well,
go.
just in general, man, there's so many trailers at this showing, and like, as bad as the theater was for the movies, they were so much worse. Like, during the trailers, like I was girding myself, because I was like, oh God, like, are these people gonna be that bad? And then once the movie started, they kind of calmed down a little bit. So I was like, all right, maybe being obnoxious during the trailers, but then as the movie kind of picked up, they got worse and worse as it went along. So,
As you do.
yeah. So I guess I'll give it my score though.
Of
I mean,
course.
I'm kind of I'm in the same ballpark for you. I'll give it. I'll go a little bit higher though. I'll give it just a 4 for now. Again though, I feel like it could potentially go up a little bit once I see it without just the totally, theater full of like barnyard people that are just god awful. But I mean, even if I watched it in an ideal experience, I can't really imagine it going above like a 5, maybe a 5.5 at most. But yeah. Again, though, I did like Church. The Church stuff was pretty good.
I'm really glad you came into this and it was disappointed. Not because I wanted you to be upset by it, just because I was worried that when I watched it, like, halfway through the movie, I realized I was like, I'm bored to tears. I hate this, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh god, if Tim loves this is going to be such a debate, and I wasn't ready for it, and I'm glad you ended up seeing the light of day.
I mean, we might be in the minority here. I actually had another friend who I think was actually more down on it than us, but I have been seeing a lot of people like on like film Twitter being like, and again, I mean, most of it might just be because I follow like a lot of things like Stephen King, and I might even be following the official like Pet Sematary Twitter or whatever. So maybe it's just a lot of retweets of them promoting positive reviews, but there are definitely like a lot of people out there that are like, oh, 10 out of 10, amazing, the creepiest horror movie yet, like the best adaptation of King ever, which is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah,
again, unless you're sponsored by King or something,
I just don't get it. I think it's really mediocre to downright bad in some aspects. So
I really can't see anyone going above like okay. Like if someone's like, oh, it's fine or it's okay, I'd be like, yeah. But the people that are saying it's great, it's a masterpiece, I'm like, that's I don't know.
I've got some magic beans to sell you if you think this is a masterpiece. Get some magic beans. But yeah, that's our discussion about Pet Sematary. We can wrap this up here, and I can tell you about a couple of things that are coming or that you can check out. Of course, go to Screams at Screams Midnight on Twitter to get us tweeting at you, as well as our individual Twitters. Sometimes Tim takes over the Screams After Midnight Twitter account and posts analysis of the title of the Boy sequel, and it's baffling to me. I don't know. So that's,
and people love that.
That's at Screams Midnight, so you can check out that. You can, of course, go to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV if you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here. And you can support us for as little as $1 per month. And starting last month, you now get a bonus episode of Screams After Midnight once per month for your $1 per month. So well worth going over and checking out. The first episode we did was The Invisible Maniac. That was a hoot. We should be recording our second bonus exclusive episode soon. And we've got one picked out. Tim picked out one, so
I'm very excited about it.
It better not disappoint because I'll be upset with him. But that's coming soon. Otherwise, of course, $5 patrons get to vote on a movie once per month on an episode. So that vote's already up. The vote, if I recall, for some reason Tim picked like crappy haunting movies from the turn of the century. I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know what. For some reason, I was just thinking about that. I kind of want to watch, but we got like 13 Ghosts, The Others, Hunting, and The Haunting of Hill House.
Yes.
So,
and for the three of which it applies, they're remakes, right? It's not. Yeah. They're all from like 1999 to 2001 kind of period.
Yeah. So I felt they loosely kind of fit together. The general theme is like, hey, are these movies as bad as I remember them? And I don't know. It's like it's like Alien versus Predator. Whoever wins, we lose, pretty much.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Timmy. So that's on the Patreon, so go check it out. Patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. But of course, like, subscribe, comment, let us know what you thought of the movie and all that in the comments. All of that also is good stuff. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time.